Let's talk about pricing your products for Etsy. Knowing how to price your products or services is one of the most critical aspects of owning a business. One could also argue that pricing is a pretty big factor in whether or not a business is going to fail or succeed. So no pressure. Howdy friends, my name is Abby. This is Type 9 Studio, where I give you Etsy tips to help you start and grow your shop. I've been a full-time seller on Etsy for over a year and a half. Before we dive into the numbers and the math and the calculator, we should discuss why pricing is important. The vast majority of this is applicable to pretty much anywhere that you would sell your products online or in person. Like I mentioned, I do sell full-time, so that is my angle here of selling full-time and helping you do that as well if you want. So I'm not coming at it from the angle of being like a cute little side hustle thing. That's not what I'm about, so it may sound a bit harsh. Hi, I'm Abby. Welcome to my channel. We're making real money. Okay. I've only been making videos on YouTube and TikTok for a month or so, but before that I was helping people in forums and on Reddit and stuff, so I've looked at dozens, if not hundreds, of Etsy shops and read and listened to videos from other like newer or very small Etsy shop owners, and a lot of them can't seem to get sales, and there is actually a pretty common theme that I notice in these Reddit posts and videos. So new business owners, and particularly new Etsy sellers, like specifically, seem to be horrified of overcharging for their products. Horrified. So they'll price them way too low to begin with, may not get any sales, and they automatically think that their price is what is making them not get sales. So then they will run a sale, like a discount, and then they still don't make any sales. And then they wonder why they are losing money. If there's anything you can expect from me and my channel, it is the blunt truth. Here's something that a lot of people don't say and don't talk about, but pricing is actually not as big of a factor in purchasing decisions as you think it is. And there's likely another reason why people aren't buying your products. Not saying that your products are automatically bad, it's just there's a bunch of different factors that go into someone's purchasing decision, and also just being seen on Etsy in general, but that's not the point of this video. But on the other hand, like the opposite side of that is you can have the greatest brand in the world, you can have the best products, people drooling over them, can't wait for them to launch, you sell out of every restock within a few minutes, but all of that means nothing if you're not making a profit. I've said this several times in my videos, but if you're seeing somebody else like on TikTok or Instagram saying that they have a six-figure business or seven-figure business, that doesn't mean that they have 6 figures or 7 figures in their personal bank account. So keep that in mind. And it does cost money to run a business. That's just the facts. Most Etsy shops are going to have like handmade items, so you're going to have machines or equipment like sewing machines, embroidery machines, cutting machines, pottery wheels, like clay ovens, whatever else kind of machines that you could have. You also probably have a computer, a phone, a printer, a camera if you make videos to promote your stuff. All those cost money as well. And some things you may have had before you started, but they don't last forever. Then you have to buy the actual product materials, your packaging materials, and you have software subscriptions like your QuickBooks, Photoshop, Illustrator, Canva, and anywhere, literally anywhere, not just Etsy, but anywhere else on the internet or in person, you're going to have a fee, at least a transaction fee if you take credit cards to sell your products. And then what if your business outgrows your house and you need to have a studio or a warehouse? Everything sounds pretty overwhelming, but that's just how important your pricing is. You may not get it exactly right at first, and that's okay. If you're brand new, just starting out, or maybe you've been around for a while and your sales are still few and far between, here's a couple things to keep in mind. Number one, you're probably not going to be able to start out with a huge profit margin. This is because you won't be able to get your materials or your products for wholesale prices. The top selling Etsy shops and like Shopify stores are not buying their products retail price from like Joann's and Michael's. So you don't need to buy like 1,000 mailers or 1,000 t-shirts or something when you first start out, because you don't have the volume of sales to support it, and that is a huge investment up front. So it does make more sense to buy things for retail at first. And that just means that your cost per item is going to be higher temporarily until you grow enough to start buying things at wholesale. Number two, it is very, very unlikely that a new business will turn a profit within the first year. Not impossible, but unlikely. If you manage to make back your initial investment in the first year, you're doing pretty good. And number 3, you can change your prices. I'd recommend doing this even if you have like the right pricing to begin with, because your costs are going to change over time. You may have more overhead costs over time. You also may have lower product costs over time because, like I said, you could buy more things at wholesale. And also your experience will change too. Once you get more experience, you can charge more like per hour for your labor rate, which I'll get into all that in a minute. So here's why you should avoid underpricing. You may be tempted to price your items lower than your competitors, especially if you're on Etsy, but this can signal to buyers that your items are lower quality. And most shoppers are going to expect to pay a bit more on Etsy for an item than they would like at a corporation store like a Target or a Walmart or something. And if you underprice and it comes time to start scaling your business, you may not be able to. So even like ignoring the fact that you need money to like live on, if you're not making additional money, like extra profit, after your cost of materials and your fees and all of that, then you're not going to have any money to reinvest, to launch new products, or even to like expand your space. So I made this mistake for a long time. So my products were way underpriced all of last year, and that was my first year of being full-time. And like out of the last year and a half to almost 2 years now, those were like my best like sales as far as amount of orders. But now, this year that I've fixed my prices, I am actually making more revenue with less sales volume. It hurts a little bit to admit. And here's something that I want you to know if you're like an empath like me or like kind of sensitive, okay? Don't be afraid to charge money for your products. I've been guilty of this too in the past and still kind of cringe a little bit when I have to send somebody an invoice or when like somebody requests a custom product. And some of you may not have this issue, and that's great. Keep on keeping on, I guess. But the sooner you can get over that hurdle, the easier it's going to be. You're not taking anybody's money by charging a fair price for your product. What your customers do with their money is their choice. If you're in that mindset of not wanting to like overcharge people for their product, then that's kind of like making you think that your products aren't worth the money or they're not worth your time to make, and that's a bad place to be in, because you need to be like 110%, 150% certain of yourself with your products and how good they are, or your customers are going to know, like they can kind of tell, if you're not too confident about them. And the whole point of a business is to make money, so it's pretty important to like charge money for them. All right, I think that about covers the why. Now let's get on to the how. So the fact is there's not necessarily a right or wrong way to price your products as far as like a mathematical formula. Some people, like especially makers, swear by the rule that says your price should be 3 times your cost of materials. But it really depends on your situation, your business structure, and how much involvement you have personally in making the products, how much overhead costs you have, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of different factors. Another complication that may not apply to everyone is wholesale. So my shop's margins are higher because I offer wholesale to other businesses, and I still need to make a profit if I sell things at wholesale price. Offering wholesale is not a requirement to have a business. You do not have to do it if you don't want to. But if you're considering it at all, I would go ahead and factor it into your pricing. That way you don't have to change it later on. Or if you suddenly get somebody that wants to wholesale and you don't have to be like, wait, let me change my prices first. I have to admit, I'm not the greatest at math. I know how to do it, but if I have to like repeat what I did, it's never the same. So that's why I use an Etsy profit calculator. I'll link to the one I use in the description box. It shows you the Etsy fees and what your profit margin is, and then you can adjust your price to get the desired profit margin. I suppose there are other calculators out there that will do all of this for you, but I think it's important to understand where the numbers are coming from. So there are 5 things I think you need to know in order to determine the price for a physical product. So number 1, you need to know the material cost for one item. That includes anything seemingly small or insignificant. Number 2, your packaging cost. Number 3, the amount of item. What? The amount of item. Number 3, the amount of time it takes you to make the one item. Number 4, how much you want to charge for labor per hour. And number 5, if your shop has the free shipping guarantee, you need to know how much it costs to ship each item. I kind of listed those really fast, but let's go ahead and break each one down. Number 1, the material cost. So not only should you keep track of your expenses for tax purposes, but you need to know exactly how much things cost. This includes anything that's pretty small, like your printer ink, if you print things as part of your orders, or if you have If you sew and you use thread, if you do stuff with a Cricut and you use transfer tape, you got to account for that as well. Just that's a few short examples, but there's a lot of other things that could fall into this. But for a lot of things, they could add up to like less than a cent, a few cents per item, but they still are important to account for. If you can make multiple products out of like one piece of something, then you need to divide that out. So just as an example, if you make custom tumblers or like custom Starbucks cups or whatever, and you cut people's names out of vinyl with the Cricut, to figure out the cost of each name, you need to see about how many names you can fit onto like one sheet of vinyl, and then just divide that by the cost of the vinyl. And also with something that's similar to a Cricut, where you have like the cutting mat that has to be replaced quite often, you want to account for that as well. It should be relatively small per project, but they are expensive to purchase, so you need to make sure that you're getting enough money back for those. Number 2, your packaging costs. This includes not only mailers and boxes, but also tape, the shipping label, bubble wrap, tissue paper, stickers, anything that goes in or on the package. I think this is what gets a lot of new businesses in trouble, because they will think they need to do this like over-the-top packaging, and you really don't. Number 3, the amount of time it takes. This seems straightforward, but can actually be pretty complicated depending on what you make. So if you make a lot of smaller products, again, this is going to take some dividing. So if your things are really, really small and don't take much time to make, do like 10 or 20 or something, and then just divide out how much time it took you to make all of those. So if it takes you an hour to make 10 items, then that would be, what, 6 minutes each? If your products are bigger or more involved, like art pieces or like knit or crochet, that gets pretty complicated. So my shop actually started as crochet, and the projects could take like dozens of hours. Or if you make things with resin or paint that need drying and curing time, it's really up to you how you account for that and how much you think your time is worth. So number 4, labor cost. This one is up to you, really. It's your shop and you make the rules. You don't have like a boss or a corporate telling you how much your labor is worth. Just keep in mind that this is not going to be what you receive as your actual salary most of the time, and a lot of your work is going to be unpaid, especially at the beginning, so don't be afraid to like push that a little bit higher, just to account for all of the unpaid hours. And number 5, the shipping thing. So if you're not doing the free shipping over $35, then don't worry about this, but here's how to do it if you want to offer it. So if you're offering the free shipping over $35, first you want to see, you'll take your product, okay, and see if it's over $35 or under $35 on its own. So if it's under $35, then you would figure out how many of that item it would take to equal $35. And then you would figure out the shipping costs for however many of that item that ends up being. So for example, if you have an item that's $5, you would figure out how much it costs to ship 7 of them, because 7 times 5 is 35, I'm pretty sure. Or if you have $12 items, see how much it costs to ship 3 of them, because 3 $12 items is $36. And then you would divide that shipping cost by the number of items. You may also have to figure this one out like after you do the rest of the calculations. I just thought about this because you're not going to know how much it costs until the end, but I think you'll get it. So if the item is $12 and 3 of them cost $3 to ship, just using that as an example, because my most popular products that I sell are about $12 and it costs about $3 to ship up to like 4 of them, so that's just my example. So since it costs $3 to ship the 3 items, you would just divide 3 by 3 to get 1, so that would be an extra $1 per item that you would charge to cover the free shipping. I'm using air quotes around free shipping if you're not watching this. The math may not be that simple, but I just used those numbers as an example. But if the item is over $35 or $35 or more, I suppose, then you just add the cost to ship that item onto the price. And remember, this is only for orders within the US, so if you get an international order, the customer will still be responsible for the shipping charge. So back to this calculator, I will put a screenshot up here. I mentioned this on TikTok and kind of tripped some people up, so let me just explain how I do it. So I don't use the shipping spots on that calculator because I factor the shipping into my item cost. And most of my orders are under $35 anyways, so it kind of doesn't matter. You can enter those if you want the calculator to figure it out for you. Hi, so I just realized while I was editing this that the Etsy fees are charged on top of shipping fees. I knew that, but I forgot to mention it or include it, and I also maybe have forgotten to do it myself for my shop, so I maybe should have been using this shipping function the whole time on that calculator. So I would suggest that you do that as well, because the fees do add up even though they are pretty small per item. You should only be charging the customer what it costs to ship the item, because I highly recommend to use like the calculated shipping option on Etsy. So that shouldn't make a difference if the item is under $35. But if the product is over $35, you can put the customer's shipping charge as 0 and then just put in your cost to ship the item in the like shipping cost section. It sounds more complicated than it is, I promise. So like I mentioned earlier, there is no exact science to this, and anyone you ask is going to have a different answer. So this is just how I do it, okay? So first things first, the material cost. I know the calculator has the your item sale price listed first, but just ignore that for a second. For the total item cost, that's what the calculator calls it, I add the material cost, the labor, packaging, and shipping. But again, if you want to do the shipping separately, that's fine. Then from that number, make up a ballpark estimate for your item sale price and put that in at the top. I usually start with about double the total item cost and then go from there. It usually ends up being more than double, but you know. Or if you already think you have a price, go ahead and put your price that you're actually charging and see how much your margin is. Then at the bottom, pick one of the 2 fee structures. So most people don't realize this, but Etsy has slightly different fees based on how the customer pays. The fee for if the customer uses PayPal, it's 2.9% plus 30 cents on the transaction. And then if they use Etsy Direct Checkout, it's 3% plus 25 cents. And then the calculator already has the 20-cent listing fee included. And when I do mine, I do the calculations for both payment methods and then pick whichever one is higher. Whichever one ends up being higher is going to depend on how much your item price is. So like one of them will be higher if your item price is really low, and then another one will be higher if your item price is really high. So it just kind of depends. And once you enter everything into the calculator, it will show you the amount of profit and the profit margin based on your like entered item price. The profit margin is the key thing to pay attention to here, and you can adjust the item sale price until you find a good profit margin. It really is up for debate and will vary greatly from shop to shop exactly what a good profit margin is. In my opinion, it should be 20% bare minimum. This is especially, like I said, if you're first starting out and buying your products or materials for like retail price instead of getting them for wholesale. But really, you should be aiming for around 50% if you want to see like real growth. And if you are first starting out and your costs are a bit higher, then you may find that the 50% gives you like a way too high of a price. You can slowly increase it over time, and then also your margin will increase over time as well once you recalculate everything with like new costs, like if you start getting things for cheaper. It also depends on the cost to run your shop and any equipment or overhead costs you have. Some shops make things with just their hands, so they have very, very low overhead costs. But some will need equipment like laser cutters, engraving machines, heat presses, stuff like that, so their margins are going to be higher. But once you get more sales and you see how much it's actually going to cost to operate each month, you'll be able to see how you need to adjust your prices. Also, completely forgot until I was like almost done filming, but don't forget the self-employment tax, because you don't have anybody that's like taking your taxes out of your paycheck, you know? So the general guidance on doing your like self-employment tax is 20 to 25% of your net income. That's not 20 to 25% on your gross income, like everything. That would be a lot. It's just on the everything minus your deductions. So like your fees and product material costs and stuff like don't count, but your like your profit does count. So keep that in mind, that you want to have enough to also pay for that. I also haven't even mentioned sales yet, which is pretty important when you're talking about profit margins. If you ever plan to run a sale, especially with Black Friday coming up, you need to make sure that your margin is high enough for you to run a sale and still make a profit. So if you're in like the 20% range, you probably can't afford to run a sale with that low of a margin, but you could temporarily increase your margin to about 30 to 40%. Then you could comfortably do like a 10% off sale and still make a profit. You could do that really with any margin, even if your margins are already like up to 50 or 60%. And I assume that most of the larger Etsy shops do this anyways for Black Friday. All right, now here's your bonus assignment. If you're planning on taking your shop full time, figure out with your newly calculated profit margins, figure out how many products you would need to sell in order to replace your full-time income or to pay your bills. I guarantee that will convince you to raise your prices. And try just raising your margins by like 2 to 3, even 5%, and see how big of a difference that makes in the amount of products that you need to sell. And then for any shop, I would suggest to update your pricing at least once a year, possibly more if you hit a growth spurt or you have like a significant change in your operating costs. A year is a pretty good amount of time for you to look back at your expenses, even through all of the fluctuations, like the ups and downs, from like the high sales toward the end of the year and then like the low sales around the summer. You'll get a good idea of like how much you're doing, like how much it costs you to operate and how much money you brought in for the entire year. I know it's really, really complicated and I did not give you like a clear set, this is exactly what you should do, but there is no way that I could do that would apply to everyone. And I don't even know, like if you asked me individually about your specific shop and your specific circumstances, it's up to you. If there are some things that you do need to factor in, like your monthly costs and your product material costs, but like your labor rate and that kind of stuff is just over my head. Some of you have asked about digital products and how to price those. I'm not in the digital product niche. I'm not 100% sure how that works. But from what I gather, it's pretty much up for interpretation. Just what you think your products are worth and the value that you're giving to your customers. But again, with digital products as well, I would warn you against underpricing. Especially don't do like $1 or $2, please, because by the time you have the listing fee and you have the transaction fee, which is at least 50 cents, like flat rate, plus the like 2.9 or 3% transaction fee, you're making like 20 or not even 30 cents, maybe 20 cents or so on a $1 listing. So I wouldn't start out like dirt cheap at first for your digital stuff, but as they start selling and you get good feedback, you can increase your prices on those. So I hope that covered everything about the pricing. Let me know if you have any other questions in the comments. I will try to answer the best I can. The main thing is to keep an eye on where your money is going and how much it costs you for things and how much money you're making, because you'll know if you need to increase prices or if you're like not making much money, then you need to bump them up. So if you watched this whole video and you haven't subscribed yet, you might as well. I do new videos about Etsy every Wednesday and Saturday. Some informational videos, some vlogs, so stick around if that sounds interesting. But I will see you in the next video and in the comments. Goodbye.